And one of the things, I don't think it's anyone's surprise here, right? That this pandemic we did not see coming, right? This is one of those things where we're in 2019 planning for 2020. We did not see, the entire economy shutting down, the world economy shutting down at such a short amount of time. The impact economically is unprecedented. You'll be hard pressed to not find an article that talks about it. But the idea here is that things are different than what you thought in 2019 when you were planning for your 2020. And so the winds have changed. And as they say, the good sailor will then change their sails to adjust, right? And so that's what we're talking about here today, is that you could do nothing. You could maybe just wait it out. But more often than not, that's usually a recipe for really either hurting your current growth trajectory or really having a hard time recovering afterwards. So we're going to talk a little bit about how do you avoid doing that. And the first thing I wanted everyone to understand is, and maybe you do understand, but sometimes it's easy to slip and forget, is that there are phases to crises, right? And a catastrophe can happen. Typically what ends up happening is you have this phase around collapse and everyone is uncertain. There's a lot of paralysis. Everyone wants to hold on to cash. Nobody wants to pull the trigger on a new deal. And then it flows into what's called the bottom, which is everyone is, very risk averse. They're trying to survive. But there are some bargain hunters out there, and there are some needs for optionality, meaning maybe those nice to have features or capabilities aren't as important as they were once before. Okay. But then what starts to happen after the bottom out is the recovery stage, right? So inevitably it does recover. Folks begin to start opening up their budgets again. Conversations start to come back in terms of pipeline and deal flow. Willingness to pay then adjusts. And so from there, you have an opportunity to then come out of this even stronger in some cases. So I just wanted to emphasize there are multiple phases in a crisis. It's not all doom and gloom and crash. There's always the bottom and the recovery. And the biggest thing I want you to avoid is this dilemma around the panic discount, right? The thing about discounting that is such an easy trigger to pull, right? You're in there, you can execute it within minutes and say, okay, new discount threshold or new discount authorities or slash prices 50% across the board to keep folks buying or to keep folks from leaving. And while again, it's a very tempting tool to use, I want to sort of bring to light to everyone the sort of long-term and recurring damage that has to your growth. Discounted customers, and this is just some data that I picked up from my friend Patrick at ProfitWell, but if you look at the churn rate for those that were discounted and how it climbs with the more discount that they received, almost fairly linearly. If you look at aggressive versus minimal discounts, aggressive discounts have a very dramatic impact on LTV. And so if you pull that trigger, we already know, especially in a subscription economy, that you have that trough and the curve to recover in that subscription model. And what's going to happen with the discount is that trough becomes a lot deeper, a lot longer, and your recovery becomes extended from there. In addition to that, willingness to pay drops. And when the discount, in some cases, you can mitigate that with a time frame, meaning this discount is only valid for 2 months or 3 months. And that's okay. That helps with the long-term effect, but you'll inevitably get a large chunk of your customer base who wants to extend beyond that or put a lot of pressure on you to keep going with those discounts. And so if you have to do it, you please, put conditions around it, put timing around it. You have to be this type of customer. You have to be seeing this type of impact. You have to have this kind of plan. You have to commit to a year if we do this, whatever it is. Make sure that there are conditions and a get to the give when you use discounting. But I would rather have you use this as a third or fourth or fifth option and not as the first and only. So here's where I want you to step back and think more than just giving away discounts. And we've come up with this 3P framework. And 3Ps, just to keep it simple, is you have to be product led, you have to be precise in terms of what you're doing, and you have to be present in terms of giving a lot of attention to where attention is deserved, especially at a time of a crisis. And we're going to unpack these much more today in the session, but I want to introduce again a 3P framework on how to monetize during a crisis.